live a little earlier than we thought, but hey, Mother Nature's decided to kind of pause things at Oklahoma City. So while they figure that out over there in Oklahoma City, this is In the Circle Live. I'm Eric Lopez, joined alongside three-time All-American at Georgia, two-time Women's College World Series participant, NPF Rookie of the Year, and head coach at Western Illinois, Alisa Goler. I think I got most of your resume. Not all of it. That's impossible. But you're joining us. I appreciate you joining us. How you doing?
I'm great. I need to hire you to introduce me everywhere I go.
I could be had. I could be had. I could be had for the right price on that. So listen, the good news is we're on a little earlier than we thought we would. But bad news is the reason we're on is because there's a weather delay in Oklahoma City. Your thoughts here now. This is a game where we're waiting Oklahoma, UCLA, talking to Victor Anderson, who's at Oklahoma City. He's hearing in the press box maybe a 7:30, 7:45 local time start time at the earliest. Lightning is the issue. Lightning struck about 10 minutes, and as you know, you have to wait 30 minutes for lightning strikes. So with all that in mind, as someone who's played and obviously in the coaching industry here, what's the mindset here? What do you think is going through UCLA and Oklahoma minds? They haven't even been able to be on the field to warm up yet, so now they got to wait. What do you think? What do you think is going on right now in both teams' locker rooms in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, I think when you're a coach in your head, you're like they gotta stay loose, not get tense, not get out of their routine, all of that, right? When you're sitting on, because I mean they could be on the bus. They could be in the locker room. I don't actually know. Back when I played, you were on the bus. So that would have been an entirely different situation. But I think you're talking about two programs that year in and year out, like this is not anything new to them. And it's probably just them sticking to what they need, which is maybe listening to music, could be playing hacky sack, could be doing a bunch of different stuff. But what you can't do is sit there and just let your mind go. You've got to stick to what you know and what your pregame routine is and just kind of figure that out. But that's part of being a high-level athlete is being able to adjust.
Mentally in particular, right? Like that's the thing, because your mind could kind of get frustrated or kind of wander in a situation like this.
Yeah. And we've all been through it. I mean, I realize it's an elimination game, so there's extra tied to it. There's higher emotion, it's very much a you win or you go home, right? Like there's a whole lot extra that's tied to it, but they got to treat it like any other game, which sounds ridiculous, but you have to, because you can't invest more than you're used to doing. You're putting yourself in a bad spot.
Well, this is part of Elimination Saturday. What was your thoughts on this day so far to this point? Obviously, your beloved Georgia Bulldogs go down to Oklahoma. And then Florida State beats Arizona in a dramatic game where Florida State wins on the walk-off sack fly. Maybe that's why Mother Nature's raining right now, because they're maybe in tears with all the Mike Condrea speculation. Let's start with that. Let's start with that game first. Your thoughts on the Noles and the Wildcats game, kind of a back-and-forth game. Danny Morgan, 3-run homer in the 6th, gives Florida State a 3-2 lead. Arizona comes back, ties it up at 3. But a defensive miscue by Karanko there, trying to turn a play at second, puts the Florida State game-winning run Mudge at 3rd, and then the sack fly wins it for the Noles. Your thoughts on the game?
I know it's tough. Everybody talks about runs, especially in postseason. The home run is always it's what gets all the glory, right? Now, I do think that most of the teams that are winning on extra base hits, because it's really hard against this pitching to string together 4, 5, 6 singles in a row. What I actually loved the most about when Arizona tied it was that it was tied on a chop single up the middle. And I was like, if that is not their game to a T right now with some other play, I love that, because I don't think that enough players get credit for when their job is to simply hit the ball hard up the middle. So I really loved that about tying it up. Like you said, defensive miscue. Teams that take care of the outs that should be taken care of are the ones that are getting out of these games unscathed. I mean, it happened this morning in the Georgia game too, like trying to force an out, trying to do it. Sometimes you just have to take a single out. And that just comes down to, like, it can be, every single player that's on the field, especially in that Arizona-Florida State game, they all have high game IQ. They wouldn't be on those teams if they didn't.
Right.
And they're being coached by coaches that they're not robots. Like, they're being taught. So they all understand that. And in the moment, like, it's really easy for us to sit and be like, why are we trying for this out? She thought she had the out. And it didn't happen, and it stinks, because if she makes the out, then that run doesn't get to third, and it might, But like, it is what it is. It's just a slight miscue, and I think Florida State did exactly what they're supposed to do. They didn't overdo it. They just put the ball in the air.
Yeah.
You know?
And they find a way to win it, and they advance. They will play Oklahoma State at some point tonight.
Yeah.
And I know Jessica's asking us questions like, what happens if the rain doesn't stop or the lightning doesn't stop? Well, the answer is, they'll have to play tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then the schedule probably gets adjusted.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to wait as long as they can. Did you have any weather issues the 2 times you were in Oklahoma City, or was it all smooth from a scheduling standpoint?
No, not with rain. I mean, like, I don't think any of us were prepared for how hot it was. But
yeah.
No, I was lucky. When we think about rain delays, everybody thinks back to the Alabama game. That's like what you think of. So we didn't have any issues with that.
No, I agree. And I think that's going to be – they're going to try to wait this out. The last thing they want to do is push the schedule back. What has been your thought? There's been some chatter even prior to this tournament about the schedule maybe being tweaked, maybe spreading it out longer so that there's not as cramped as many games. What's your opinion on that? Do you think the schedule for the Women's College World Series should be adjusted? Do you like it the way it is? And obviously Mother Nature here is part of the factor in when you think about all those things.
The only thing that I have ever, and I'm not saying I don't agree with it, but I will say, like, the one big conversation piece that I find that a lot of my coaching friends and I have is the whole, if you win on day one, you play the next day. And if you lose, you wait that day and then you play. And revenue wise, they're doing it because they want to keep fans around. Like, that's the reality. But I do think there's a debate about if that is necessarily fair or not. Like, in some ways, some people would like to see the loser have to go the next day right away. And, it kind of is what it is. I think that having played both times, my first year there, we went immediately into the losers bracket. So we had that tough road and we had to play the back-to-back days on Saturday. And that was tough. Like, that was brutal. And then my second year, we were in the winners bracket and ended up having to do it. So it's like, regardless of what it is today, when you're playing that back-to-back time slot, that's hard. Like, that's just, I don't think anybody understands how hard that is.
No, I agree. And it's tough because you mentioned the heat, but when I went in 2018, I was like taken aback how hot it is.
That's terrible.
And right. And, we're both like, you're playing at Georgia. I'm from Florida. We're used to humidity. We're playing, heat, but like, it just hits you, especially that Friday night to Saturday turnaround, because the Friday night game, like last night, for example, it ended like 12:30 Eastern AM or whatever, but you got to come back for a noon game. And I remember I was kind of like, woof, I was like worn out, and you have to hydrate yourself. Like, I remember people are telling you at the stadium, hydrate yourself because it could get serious from that standpoint. I would imagine it's just the same with the athletes from that standpoint. I think that's the hardest part is that Friday to Saturday turnaround, especially if you got to play early.
And I think the other piece of it that everybody has to remember is, normally when you play a game, like when you're in your regular season, when you're in your conference season, of course, you always have emotions that you play with, and you can be mentally exhausted, physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted. The World Series is all of that on steroids. So when these athletes are playing games and they finish, especially if you lose, that's actually one of the hardest things, is being able to get yourself back okay, to where you need to be emotionally, mentally. And then there's obviously the physical aspect. Everybody thinks about that, but it's, for a lot of these teams, especially when they're on elimination days, I mean, you have to truly reset, because if you're going all in, like, you are spent. It is not. Then that's stuff that, like, as coaches, I'm sure they would tell you, like, they've got to figure out how to kind of help manage that. But that's hard. Like, you're talking about 18 to 23-year-old females, like, and I'm not saying that in a sense of like males don't go through it too. That's not what I mean. I'm just saying, like, they're still learning to figure themselves out and grow and all of that. And that's part of it. That's part of the maturity that comes with it. And I read this great quote on Twitter. I don't remember who had it, but it was like, the pitcher that's the most unbothered tends to win. Well, yeah, like the team that's the most unbothered.
Yeah, no doubt about that. We're joined by Victor Anderson. He's live at the stadium, somewhere at the stadium there in Oklahoma City. Victor, what can you give us give us an update right now, the status over there?
Yes, certified chief meteorologist Victor Anderson with your weather on the forest here in Oklahoma City. It is still raining. It's a light drizzle. But the concern is lightning in the area. They had some flashes which reset the lightning alarm for 30 minutes. From what I've heard from a couple of people, they're trying to gain towards like a 7:50, 7:55 start if possible. The
Central
tarp
time
is
zone. Central. Yeah.
Central Time. That's 8:55 Eastern. They did take the tarp off the field briefly before they had to re-tarp it because there was more rain coming into the area. The biggest question is going to be if they do get these games in, when do they start the games, and are they going to try to shrink that buffer time in between games one and two? Because the NCAA rule is that you have to start games by 11:59 p.m. local time. So when do they start that UCLA Oklahoma game? And that's going to dictate if they are able to play Florida State versus Oklahoma State. And also, there's a consideration. It is something we haven't really discussed that much. If for whatever reason they can't get these two games in, that's going to shift the entire schedule on Sunday. And then there's a possibility you may have, if necessary, games on Monday before the Champ Series. So a lot of dominoes in play depending on what decisions that they make within the next hour, hour and a half. It's a very critical time for what we can see here in Oklahoma City.
All right, Coach Goler, what's your reaction there? What Victor is saying there? There's a lot of interesting dilemma here, and some decisions could be made. If you were on that staff on one of those teams that's playing later tonight, do you want to wait until the very possible minute to get it in? Would you rather just call it and play tomorrow and go back to the hotels? What would be your mindset there?
Well, did you see my face when we were talking about playing an on Monday? Oh my God. I think if I'm a coach, I'm still trying to get my game in today.
Okay.
And I say that because the only team that hasn't been through this is JMU. They don't know any differently, right? Like they just don't. Every other team, they've been through this. They're used to the routine of it. They know what to expect. As a coach, you know if you've got more than one pitcher, you're kind of planning on how you're going to throw people based on your schedule, all of that. So I, being a creature of habit, am trying to get it in. It doesn't mean everybody's going to agree with me. Some might be like, no, let's let them go back and rest. But I'm still taking one game today versus trying to cram them in tomorrow. I don't want to have to play like two more games in the same day. Because even though they haven't played, they've been at the field. And they're going to be at the field for another several hours. And that's not the same as like a whole rest and relaxation. Because like we talked about, like you have to stay dialed in because you can't lose where you've been at with your focus. Not many players can just take a 2-hour nap right now and wake up and be ready to go.
Right. Now, here's an interesting question. I want to ask you, Coach, first, and then Victor, you'll chime in on this. If you have an option to get one of the two games in, but the second game doesn't get played, it gets pushed back, is that really a fair process? Would you rather have the two games get washed out so it's more balanced there? Because that could be those are some of the scenarios that could be coming down here, depending on the radar. I know some of the people that are watching are saying that the radar does not look good. It looks like more rain could be on the way. Victor, I don't know if you've heard that. You could address that in a moment. But your thoughts on this, because I remember it was a few years ago, Michigan wasn't happy with the way the format was played out. And it, people are like, well, that's kind of unfair balance here. We could be headed for some conversations here that people don't want to have necessarily, but may have to have it.
Yeah, I mean, I think any coach is going to try to argue for it to be as balanced and fair as possible. I don't know many people that are going to be like, I don't care. Maybe, but again, like with this never having, well, it probably has before. I don't know if there's precedents. I'd have to do research on it, but for not having this occur in the last, 4 or 5 years, I think they'd have some pushback if one played and the other didn't.
Okay, so that's kind of what I was curious about. Would some teams have an issue if one game got played but the other one didn't? That's why that's really interesting. Hopefully, it doesn't get to that point. We could sneak these two in, but Vic,
it is right?
Right. You have no control. It's Mother Nature. Victor, do you think we'll hear a statement here? How often do you get updates over there in Oklahoma City?
We get updates as we get them in here, Eric. So we're hopeful that we can get something maybe within the next half an hour or so and kind of get some clarity. But to Coach Goler's point, if you're a creature of habit, you've already been in a ballpark for several hours anticipating to play, you want to play. And back to the whole fair and balanced situation, they're either going to get both games in or they're not going to play any at all tonight, just to make sure that neither team has an advantage or disadvantage over the other because they still have to win 2 games on Sunday. They may just have to win both games to get to the champ series. They may have to win 2 games on Sunday to force the if necessary, which could be played on Monday.
Wow.
So there's a lot of scenarios that can be taking place if they don't get the games in. If they do, I anticipate they're trying to do everything in their power to get both games in. I'll give you a perfect example. Texas and Oregon in the regionals in Austin. They had that weather delay that lasted the entire day. Oregon won, forced the if game, and they started that game around 11:15 Central, 12:15 Eastern. Me and you were alive for that, and we elected to hold off on it because, well, we wouldn't know who was going to win. Don't be surprised if they get Oklahoma, UCLA in, they shrink that buffer between games for Florida State and Oklahoma State. That way they get both games in, and then one of those teams is going to be at a distinct disadvantage when they have to play Alabama tomorrow, knowing that they likely have to beat Montana Fouls twice. And when she's been pitching, I don't know, regardless of who gets out of this matchup, is that going to be possible?
All right, Victor, let's do this. Check back with us in about 15, 20 minutes for an update. We'll let you go now. Get yourself, hydrated because, well, it could be a long night. Get some caffeine.
Yes. Yes, sir.
We'll talk to you later on. That's Victor Hill checking in from Oklahoma City there, giving us the update there. All right, what's your reaction about shrinking the time in between games when warm-ups? Is that a big deal, little deal as far as from a coaching standpoint? If they have to do it. Not a big deal?
I don't think so. I think most of us, even like in regular season, when people are like, hey, the rain's coming, let's go. We're like, all right, go quick through lines, skip the lines. Your pitcher's already going to be going because every pitcher has their own timeline for what they need. So they're going to be in the bullpen. I don't think anyone's going to say boo about that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Let's get into some of the games that have been played. We were talking about the Arizona-Florida State game. Florida State wins. They'll play Oklahoma State. Arizona, obviously, a lot of the story on the TV broadcast and even the post game he was asked was Mike Condrea's future. Whether this is his last game or not, he kind of said he was not going to address that now. He's not going to think about that now. He's going to make the decision on his terms whenever he's going to make it, but it's about his players right now. As someone who has played in the sport, coached right now in the sport, and let's be honest, you've probably been a fan even longer than that. Your reaction here in what could be, we don't know, but it could be the end for Mike Condrea and his career.
You're talking about a man that, whether he knows it or not, I'm sure he does, but like whether he knows it or not, he's been an ally and someone that has supported women in sports, but especially in softball for his entire career. I'm sure there's so many of us that have memories of him that he never would even remember, but it's like left a lasting mark. I remember the first time I met him and I just introduced myself because I am friends with, Caitlin and Taryn, his assistants, and we were recruiting together in California. And I just wanted to say hello, to not be rude, obviously, because I'm sitting by him. I didn't want to be that person fangirling over him. And I said, hey, I'm Alisa. And he was like, yeah, Goler. He's like, you were a hell of a hitter. And it was like, because we played Arizona. I played them one time in my career. It's not like I had some lasting, moment with him. And I think it's like things like that, where if you lined all these coaches and people that played for him up, and probably people that worked with him or were around him or anything, I guarantee we could all rattle off stuff like that. And I think that's what makes him so special to our sport. And I know that every one of his players just absolutely adores him. You don't hear bad things about him. And I think that just is so amazing, especially in today's day and age where everybody likes to be a keyboard warrior and just talk from the safety of an anonymous account. Like, the man has to have one of the biggest fan clubs ever. And my heart hurt, just like everyone else's did, for them not to win. You can't help but want him to have had the chance to go out on top. And I think all of us seeing him in the dugout after the game, that hurt. That hurt me. I was gonna
say, someone who has been in that dugout as a player and as a coach, what was going through your mind as that TV is just focused on him? And I knew it was coming, and they're just gonna they're gonna stay with him as long as they can, and there he is in the dugout. What were you thinking, and what do you think he was thinking?
I think it's like it sets in when the game is over, but I remember from being a player, when you're on the verge of elimination and you get down to those final couple outs, of course you have the back of your mind where you're hoping something happens, but it also has that moment where it kind of sets in. And I remember getting choked up with a couple outs left when my career was about to be done. And I'm sure he was kind of going through that. And I think he's a stoic, special guy. So he was doing his best to not show it. But, I'm sure sitting in that dugout, he was hit by a flood of emotions. And I feel for the man, but it's like at the same time, I'm excited for what he's going to be able to, like, what life after ball is going to be like for him, because talk about someone that's given their entire life to our sport. Like, he's so deserving of doing whatever the heck he wants to do. Like,
Right.
so, I think the entire softball community is behind him, and I hope he knows that. I'm sure he does, but I hope he knows that. And I hope his kids, his players, his current players can be so proud of the year that they had, because they wanted this for him so badly. And that is not them being knocked out doesn't define what they did for him this year. I mean, it doesn't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
they got back to Oklahoma City. I mean, that's the big thing. Remember, he had that drought, and I've talked to him about it. From 2010 when Kinsey Fowler and company, they got to play the championship series against UCLA. They hadn't been back until 2019. This is the group that got him back there. Yeah. And it's been refreshing talking to him in a lot of these media availabilities and just talking to him when I've had a chance to talk to him. He hasn't taken this for granted anymore. He admitted, years past, he would take some of this for granted because they always won. And he's learned to kind of embrace this and enjoy it. And that's why you've seen him get, I think, more emotional. He got emotional when they got through Ole Miss in the Supers 2 years ago. I got back to Oklahoma City. He got emotional after they won the regional in Hildebrand this year against Ole Miss. He kind of denied why. They asked him, is that because that could be your end there? And he kind of deflected the question. But I think he's kind of enjoyed this ride. And I think he genuinely enjoys this senior group. He's talked about this senior group so much, and he gets emotional about it. And I think he's just taking it every step. And again, we don't know if he's going to retire or not. But I think he's just, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy this because I don't know when it's going to end. I don't know. Maybe I will decide to step down. Maybe I won't. But I'm not going to take this for granted like I did maybe years ago.
I think I speak for everybody when I just, he just deserves a big thank you, a big heartfelt thank you for everything that he's done.
Yeah, I agree. And it was cool. I got to call an Arizona game in person and see them in person for the first time in my career, my life here this year when they played at UCF. So it was, and it's just, there's something about his presence when he's walking in, right? Like right. And you mentioned that when you met him, right? Everybody just kind of has that story, like, ooh, right? It's just, I don't know how, it's like a mythical legend, right? Like people are going to be telling stories for years.
He's the GOAT. I mean, we have several coaches in our game that we refer to that as, but that's him.
Yeah.
He's the GOAT. So.
Has done a great job with that alumni too. I mean, they showed the footage on the all the alumni that's there, and then you met obviously Caitlin Lowe and Taryn Moat on that staff, who've done a great job there. It's just a heck of a family that he's built there.
Oh, and that group is loyal, from his managers to his former players to people that probably have worked on grounds crew around there. Like they are loyal to a T, and that, again, testament to him for being as inclusive as he has been, because it clearly has trickled down, and that's really special.
No doubt. So we'll see what happens there. Selfish reasons, we hope he continues to coach. That'd be cool. But if he decides that he wants to hang it up, hey, he's going out on a pretty good note and on a great term, and he's done so much for the sport without question. Now, the team that won the game, Florida State, they're going to play Oklahoma State at some point. What's your thoughts on them? They've done this before. They were in 2018. I was there. They lost the first game, came out of the losers bracket, and ended up winning the national title. And I even asked Danny Morgan on the postgame about that, and Coach Alameda. They've been here. They have players that have gone through this. How much is that important, having that experience to have been a part of this? Like, because you went back the second year. I got to believe that helped you that second time around from the first time. This group has been through this before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the biggest stage. And yes, I think there's in anything in life, when you have experience, you have a leg up. But I think it's so funny because I was talking to somebody about Florida State, and I was like, it is just wild to me. I swear they just know how to win. I don't even know how to describe it besides that. And I'm not saying that, I'm not laughing it off. I'm saying they just know how to win. It's in Lonnie and Travis and, and Craig was there. That's obviously what they are recruiting people that can come in and do that. They clearly are developing that, but they are just so dang scrappy. They have an All-American on the mound, but when you look at her and then you compare to another All-American like a Fouts, you don't think to yourself oh, this is overly impressive. And again, it's not a dig. It's just the reality. She's still an All-American. She's getting it done. maybe she just induces ground outs, but she's getting ground outs left and right. It's just wild.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm like, man, you can never count them out.
It's not our most talented team. It's a different team. They're used to having so much firepower offensively they just don't have this year for various reasons. Yeah. They don't have the Jesse Warrens and the Matty O'Briens and players like that, but they find a different way to win. Like you said, they go with speed. She's developed Sandercock to being an All-American. I think Lonnie, you got to say Lonnie's one of the best pitching minds in the sport. Yeah. And she just keeps producing arms after arms over there. And like you said, here they are. They're going to play Oklahoma State at some point, and if they can win that, they'll be in the semifinals again, even when you thought maybe this is not the year that they can get back that way, but they find a way. Like you said, it's a pretty remarkable a credit to her and Coach Travis Wilson, obviously.
I think it's just like when you look at them, teams that aren't afraid to fail in these games are the ones that typically tend to come out on top, and this is not a team that's afraid to fail. They weren't afraid to fail against LSU. They weren't afraid to fail. And you know what I mean when I say that, right? Like,
yes,
you don't look at them and think like, oh, they're tense, oh, this and that. Like, no, they don't look like that. They could be down by 3 and they look the same as when they're up by 6. And that's a big deal. It's really hard to teach that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes them dangerous, and that's how they're going to be. They're not going to come in and I think people like to write the stories about like, oh, so-and-so has a chip on their shoulder. I don't think they feel that way. I think they're just like, hey, like, we're just going to show up and compete and do our thing.
Yeah, no, they will play Oklahoma State, and then the winner of that game will play Alabama, who's in the driver's seat, led by Montana Fouts, who has been tremendous, pitching a perfect game against UCLA on Friday night. We actually have a question from our audience, Perry, who's got a question for you, Coach. How would you attack this version of Montana Fouts?
Am I a coach or am I hitting?
All of the above. Take whatever hat you want to use on that.
Gosh. Well, I have to say, like, I remember watching her in travel ball. And when, when they're like 15, 16, they have a ceiling, but we never know what the actual ceiling is going to be. And I think that's why, like, when Murph talks about giving credit to Steph, I mean, my God, Steph Van Brakel, you're unreal. Montana's unreal. I don't know. Like, you got to wonder, like, would she have developed like that if she had gone to any other school? I just think that like so much credit needs to go to Murph's culture and Steph and Montana's obvious work ethic and how she is as a human being. I think she's proved to a lot of people that she's good. She's good people, like, with the whole shaking Mike's hand and how she just has handled everything. But how would I approach her? You got to be able to, if you're not tracking the last 3 feet against this kid, you're in trouble because the ball breaks the most the last 3 feet. And a lot of hitters that are swinging at rise balls over their head, like, you're not tracking the ball. And I say that as someone who myself went through that. That's not me saying that, like, these are not elite hitters. Like, a lot of elite hitters don't always track the ball as deep as they should. If you looked at a lot of our film, our eyes are out in front. But I think, like, the focus has to be on, you have to see the ball deep. Like, you have to, even on your takes, be actually tracking it back into the catcher's mitt, which seems like such a juvenile thing to talk about. But you ask most hitting coaches of D1 teams, Power 5 teams, a lot of our kids don't actually track the ball.
Is that a lost art? Why is that? What's the cause of that?
I couldn't tell you. All I know is that it's incredible when you break down film a lot of times from a side angle. If you watch your kids' eyes, most of them are making the decision to swing when the ball is 3 to 4 feet in front of them and the break hasn't occurred yet. And a lot of times you're going to see their eyes like in that same spot as they're swinging. It's interesting. And I don't know the answer to that. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, it's because people aren't being taught that. Like, I have no idea. But I just know that it sounds so simple. But when people are like watching on TV and they're like, I can't believe this kid's swinging at something over their head. Well, her stuff moves. Like, it's doing its job. It's just, you really have to force yourself to track the ball. And, the other piece is like, if you're out of sequence, and I know I'm getting like mechanical, but like, if you're out of sequence and your upper half is going before your lower half, you're going to have a really hard time tracking your rise ball. And I think somewhere some of my hitting guru coaches are like, but I think the other piece is like, when you do get something hard and hittable in the zone, you better pull the trigger. Too many people are worried about her up stuff and they take pitches early in the count that they should hit. And it's hard enough to hit 0-0 against her. You go 0-2, 1-2, like, best of luck. You're not going to have a lot of success. You don't have a lot of success in general in our game in those counts, but when you're going up against somebody who has just thrown a perfect game against UCLA, like, you definitely are making life very difficult for yourself.
She's been incredible. We got an update here posted. OU just posted an update. Game won't start until after 8:20 Central Time. Oh, so we're looking at a 8:20 at the earliest start time. And who knows if that'll be the exact, or it could be later. Holy smoke, it's gonna be a late night here, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we're on right now, because, well, me and Coach Goler, we gotta. That's gonna be a lot past our bedtime, I have a feeling, but that is what it is. That's part, but that's why, the winner's bracket game is so critical, isn't it? That's why, because if you win the first two games, you don't have to deal with this stuff, right? That's why right now, if you're Alabama and James Madison, there's probably a part of you is kind of smiling, saying, "Hey, keep it raining," right?
Yeah, they're hanging out. They're sitting pretty.
Yeah,
they're sitting pretty.
Let's talk about the earlier game, Oklahoma, Georgia, and let's start with the Sooners, because obviously this offense has been historic. Unfortunately, they kind of got going against Georgia there. When you see Oklahoma, why are they so good offensively? What makes them click there? That's just putting these ridiculous, video game numbers that people just kind of like are in awe about. As someone who has played at the highest level, has been you're one of the greatest hitters ever. You coach the offensive side of the game, and yet this Oklahoma offense is going to go down as one of the greatest, if not greatest, offenses. Why are they so good?
I think it's a couple things. I mean, at the grassroots level, it comes down to like the fact that they are continuously proving that they know how to recruit, and they bring in the best of the best each year. Again, testament to them. I'm not there every day. I don't know what they're specifically practicing, but like they obviously can hit both sides of the plate. That's a big deal. You'd actually, everybody says they want to hit an inside pitch. You ask most younger hitters, you're like, hey, if I was going to give you a pitch right now in front toss and you were going to crank the ball, where do you want it? And they're like, in. The reality is not everybody can hit 65, 66 tight inside. OU hits both sides of the plate. Okay, so that's a big thing in itself. Most teams are very much one side or the other. Okay, so you got that. You've got the fact that we've seen them sit on changeups and hit them out. I think their training regiment it's pretty obvious that they clearly work with velo, they work with break, and they work off speed. Like, they're doing that stuff every day, because you don't become great at hitting that stuff unless you're doing it every day. And then I think the other side of it that not many people can understand if they haven't played on a team like this, but you do not get a break in that lineup. Like, you can never rest easy on the infield or in the dugout as a coach, because the next person coming up has video game numbers also. Like, usually you can get through your top four and you breathe easy for 2 innings and you're like, all right, 6, 7, 8, 9, we can go to work here. Like, the power numbers are down, the OB percentage is down. Like, the most normal coaches, like myself, like when I'm playing, I'm like, okay, here your 8 hole has numbers that people's 3 holes have. Yeah. So and that's, when you think about it, if you're going to prep your team and you're going to prep your pitcher to go up against this, like, that's hard. That's tough. That goes with the mental side of it. And I just don't think that many people have ever experienced coaching against an offense like that, or defense. And maybe you get lucky and somebody hits a one-hopper at you, but in your head, you're like, holy smokes, like, that was ripped. And now the next person coming up has 24 home runs too. Like, so I think there's a little bit of that too. I think, like, when you're coaching against them, you really have to be prepared. And furthermore, like, you've got to have a team that can understand that you're going to give up a home run in the game. I at this point, like, you can't think you wouldn't. Their numbers are too high.
Right.
It's like, it's going to be a win if you're keeping them to singles.
Well, and Odyssey Alexander's performance was kind of the blueprint. She had the 1 inning, gave up the 3-run homer, but kept them off the bases, didn't give them any free pass, too many free passes, and kind of worked around that lineup and did a heck of a job and made them chase out of the strike zone. We'll see if Rachel Garcia can do that when they play, if they play. For the latest on the updates here, now I think he's in the press box now in Oklahoma City. Victor rejoins us here. What can you tell us, Victor? What's the latest over there?
Yeah, so one of our fans actually tweeted the news that we just talked about, that they're going to have an update at 8:20. to reassess the
Oh,
situation here in Oklahoma City. So then, so that's gonna they'll have an update and maybe looking at possibly 9 if they actually get the update. So you're looking at
oh, we're all right. We're losing you, Vic. I think the Mother Nature is playing havoc with your connection as
and big
well. And
this earlier.
hold on. Yeah,
You can't
yeah. We're losing you. We're losing you.
local time.
All right. I think we caught some of that. All right. So they'll reassess.
Yes. So let me.
Okay. There. Yeah. I knew that was coming. We knew that was coming. Mother Nature, man. You never try to fight it in technology. But I think we got the gist of the update there. It looks like 8:20. They're going to reassess things, and they hope to play at some point, maybe around 9:00. Right somewhere between after 8:20 at some point. It depends on the field conditions. How big of a factor is that? The field conditions, right? Coaches are going to look. They want to make sure that field's in good condition. You're not going to be playing in a conditions where you could run risk of an injury as well.
Yeah, I don't think they'll do that. And I also think that based on what I've heard, like they have a very, very good grounds crew. They would never put them in. Those coaches are not going to rush getting a game in to play in a less than pristine situation. They're not going to do it. And I just don't see them allowing that at the World Series.
No. So we'll see what happens with that development there. But it's going to be a late night over there. Everybody have their caffeines ready up there in the press box there. Yeah. Back to the Oklahoma game. Obviously, Oklahoma was good. G. Juarez, I thought, was fantastic. Shutting down a really good Georgia offense that scored a lot of runs against them when they played back in Athens. What did you see from G. Juarez there, who some people have been wondering about? She didn't pitch in the Supers. Is she healthy? She's had some issues in her career since she's been at OU, but she looked fantastic. And for Oklahoma to make a run, they're going to need good pitching. And with her, Nicole May, and Shannon Sale, they have the arms.
I mean, I think with whatever was going on, right, it's not our business. Whatever was going on, credit to the kid for coming out in an elimination game and doing her thing. She didn't look like she missed a beat. She looked like she could have thrown the past 2 weeks, But again, you're talking about, they've got arguably the best pitching coach in the game in their dugout. I think she knows what she's doing. She wouldn't have one, and she would never put one of them out there if she didn't think that they could throw to the best of their ability. And I think that's what, Oklahoma is fascinating to me. I was talking about this to a couple other coaches. It's insane that they actually do have 3 pitchers that I think they feel confident they can throw in any given game. Nobody else in the World Series has that. And I don't know if anybody else in the country had it this year, but it was it didn't matter who was in the circle. It was what it was. And I think there was that interview that was circulating about how, they felt like that competitiveness made all 3 of those pitchers better. I think that, they talk about the freshmen coming in pushed everybody too. And there is a lot, most coaches, we want competitive environments at practice because that is what pushes you to the highest level. And most of these schools that have the ace, yes, they have a 2 and they probably have a 3, but it's not the same. There's a lot of discrepancies. So I do think that Oklahoma has that advantage because they have had that all year. And, it's got to be pretty great to sit as a coach or even as a player, as a pitcher, and know that even if you don't have your best stuff, if you can get through 3 innings, you're going to have somebody else that can come in and not miss a beat. What a blessing to have that in your dugout. So I think that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, I agree. And for Georgia, really a good run just to get to Women's College World Series. I think Coach Champer at Georgia are probably going to be thinking about that Oklahoma State game. They had a chance to maybe pull that one out, some base running plays there that didn't go their way. But a kind of a young team. I've kind of gotten to know Coach Champer a lot. I've covered her here during this run here. People have got to forget they're a very young roster. Now, they're going to have a big question at the Circle with Mary graduating, but they got a young roster here with players like Fields, who I think is blossoming, and others like they have on this roster. I think they're kind of ahead of schedule. They had some ups and downs during the season, but they get to win the regional against Duke. They got to host. They benefited. They took care of it. But then they dominated Florida in that super regional. This is all positives here for them moving forward with this youth, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think their freshman class is ranked top 3, right? They're nasty. I say that with love, they're nasty. They're good. Yeah, I mean, pitching is the name of the game at the end of the day in our sport. It doesn't matter if you score. if Oklahoma didn't have the pitching that they had, they wouldn't have won as much as they did despite all of their numbers, you know? So I think that'll be interesting. I think the future is super bright for them, especially with how much experience these young guys have now gotten. I mean, that you can't put an amount of money on that. Like that's what's going to set them apart. They've now gone through a regional, a super, and a World Series, and that's just moving forward. Nobody really understands how big of a deal that will be, but they played at the highest level and they succeeded too, you know. But I think them as an alum, I'm proud because I think they always play the game the right way. I don't think that they ever don't play hard. I think that it's really easy for people to sit and want to talk about coaches and be like, what do you think about so-and-so? And I was laughing this year. I was so fired up because people were angry that they were hosting that regional. When you and I both know Athens got that regional bid because they have the ability to host and have a lot of room and parking and all of that,
and they can bust the 3 teams there.
They didn't get it because they were a favorite SEC team. Like that was such a the commentary on that. I was like, okay, people, like let's educate ourselves before we go wild on Twitter about this. But I think that them coming out and just being willing to play hard and see what happened against Duke, like that was crazy as it was. And then they went to Florida, and all of us, whether you're an alum or you're not, nobody's expecting them to not let Florida score a run. Like I remember thinking like, oh, like I hope it's competitive. I don't know who's going to win, but I hope they're good games. And then they just turned around and did that. And like, again, yes, I played there. I would lay down my life for that woman. I love Lou more than anything. I think she's like the impact she left on all of us is incredible, but like she wins.
Well, and I'm glad you bring this up, not to interrupt, because I feel like she kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Mm-hmm. Like she never gets brought up. When we think of coaches, let's just even talk about the SEC. Obviously, Murphy and Walton jumps up because of the national titles. Coach Torina is doing great things at LSU, the weeklies, etc. Quietly, she's gone to 5 Women's College World Series with taking Georgia there. Like you were a part of that where it began, really. But now they become a regular, 16, 18, 21. They mentioned on the broadcast, Courtney Blades, the great Southern Miss player, who her daughter's playing for Coach Champer. Champer was at Southern Miss. She's at Western Illinois, where you're coaching now. She's quietly had a heck of a career that I don't know if people appreciate as much.
No, I don't think they do. I'm saying, like, it's so easy for people to just talk about winning is hard. Okay. These teams that come in every year and are top 10 and continue to win, that is unbelievable that they keep doing that. And it's testament to their culture, their player development, and who they recruit. But like, man, when you think about it, winning is so hard. Even teams getting 30 plus wins a year is hard. So I just, it kills me because sometimes I'm like, man, there's just no respect for her and Tone over there. But, going back to like what they do, in my opinion, better than most is they teach their kids how to hit. Like they teach them how to hit. Those kids graduate better than they came in. And that's up and down the lineup. That's not just your 9 starters. That's everybody who's in that program, because she's not going to let somebody come into that program and leave having not gotten better. I know that about her. She won't do it. And that is something that, like, I sound like a shameless plug for them right now, but like if I'm someone who is a hitter and I want to get better, I'm looking at players that continue to get better all 4 years and players that can hit both sides of the plate for power. Like that's why they were so dangerous. When you hear the announcers talk about like, oh man, they hit the ball out of the park. Well, they hit the ball at the park because they know how to physically maneuver their body to hit all these different pitches and these different speeds, because that's what they work on every day. Like that's really hard to teach, and not everybody does that. And I think that's why like Jerry Glasgow, obviously he was there, like his teams are like that too. But I think you can ask any of us alum, like that's why when we went into the pro league, we all matched because we had already learned how to do this. And that's what makes her so good. That's why they went into Florida and did what they did. That's why they went against Duke and did what they did. Because that's how they are. That's how they function every single day.
And she lets her coaches coach too. That's the other thing that jumps out, because I've spoken to Jerry, and it's funny because when I've talked to Jerry about the success of his offense and the success he's had everywhere, and he made a point to bring up, listen, all the success at Georgia starts with Lou. She let me be who I was and helped me, and let me coach the offense how I wanted to, and gave her all the credit. And Tony Baldwin, as you know, was learned under Jerry, been on that staff, came back to 101 because he wanted to work with Lou again. And then Rachel Fico has done a great job with the pitching staff. I mean, the continuity, that's the thing that strikes me, is she lets her coaches coach, because that's not the case everywhere. A lot of times coaches kind of want to be hands-on everywhere. I'm not saying she's not, but she trusts in Coach Tony. Like, the Super Regional, she went out of her way to give credit to Coach Fico for the game plan against Florida. Yeah. Coach Tony for the philosophy. Yeah, you're smiling. So that's the thing that impresses me. And even her class, they asked her in the pre-World Series media availability about Oklahoma State, because there was a couple players, Allison Febri in particular, that played at Georgia, that was at Oklahoma State. And her answer was so classy. She's talking about, I'm happy for them. I always root for them every game except Thursday. Yeah. Right? But how many coaches would say that about players that would move on to another program? I thought that was such a class act by her. And I've just been so impressed by her. And I've gotten to know her a little bit this year, as I've interviewed her a few times on the podcast as well as on media availability. It's been really impressed with her. And I know you're not surprised because you played for her. So.
Well, I just think that, I think one of the most common things that I hear is like, oh, like your coach scares me. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, like she's tough, or she was tough. I don't know how she is now. She's probably a lot nicer now, right?
I'm sure.
That's an entirely different podcast. Stories about
yeah.
But I'm like, I don't know why. Like she just is someone that gets down to business and does their work. It doesn't mean she don't love you. So I'm not surprised though. Like that's how she is. I think she's unbelievable about giving credit where credit's due, and she always tries to highlight people that work hard and do the right thing. So that's why her staff is who her staff is.
I agree. No, I agree on that. She's tremendous. So I think a great run for Georgia, and I think the future is bright with that talent coming back. Obviously, you got to replace Wilson. But I had Coach Fico on the podcast last week, and she's retired now from the NPF. And one of the things she says she's excited about is she gets to recruit now. First of all, because nobody's been able to recruit for the last year, but that's a whole other story.
Yep.
But this because you played. When she was playing, she kind of had to balance both playing and recruiting. Couldn't be on the road as much because she's playing a season. Well, now she's going to be recruiting. And I could tell in her voice, she's really looking forward to that. And I think, to have her on the road with Lou and Tony there, I think they'll obviously figure it out from a pitching standpoint. We'll see if Rogers, the youngster who they threw in today, getting some experience. And that's a good segue because I have a question here. They for a pitcher like May, Nicole May, who apparently Patty Gasso said on the Oklahoma radio pregame that she would get the ball against UCLA. Okay. They brought her in to close out the Georgia game. And I was in the press conference. Patty Gasso said she wanted to get her in to get her feet wet in this stage in the World Series. How big is that? They brought her in with to finish that game to kind of settle their, have never played in the Women's College World Series. Is that a big thing there that you bring her in there to that helps her here the rest of the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I realize it just sounds like 2 outs, but it's still 2 outs and experience more than she would have had if she's getting the ball. I think, they probably put her in when they know her by now, right? Like they know how she is. Jen obviously works with her every day in the bullpen. If they felt like those 2 outs were what she needed, then that's probably why they went with that. If they felt like she needed more, then they probably would have done that. But I do think that giving someone the ball in that circle, in that crowd atmosphere, because I don't care what any athlete says, like it does affect you.
Okay.
You may get out there and block it out, but at some point, and it's usually when things are going wrong, like you do have times where you're like, wow, like we're playing in front of a ton of people, it's loud. So I think that was smart on their part to do that. I think there's a lot of coaches that have proven that they understand the importance of giving players big moments like that to help prepare them and calm their nerves. And like, when I think about that, I think about Florida State and Alabama with how they do it too. So I think that was smart. I think that those 2 outs at the end of the day are just 2 more outs of basically information that kid now has.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good deal. We got more questions for you. You become popular here. You're gonna be like the co-host at this rate. They're asking you. Perry asked if you could have one hitter from the Women's College World Series right now in this current Women's College World Series to pick to teach hitting to somebody. Would it be somebody on the Oklahoma lineup? Would it be a Bailey Hemphill? Who would you pick?
Oh my gosh.
Interesting.
Shoot, I would take all of them. I'd take anybody that's there right now. Okay, well, I'm biased because I coached Kaylee Tao in travel ball.
Okay, all right.
And like, I absolutely adore the kid and her family. I would take her again in a heartbeat because she's also a lefty. And I just think like someone, everybody gives Bailey love, but the kid hits behind Bailey. And the reason Bailey gets pitched to a lot is because Kaylee's a 3-time All-American who hits behind Bailey. So I think it's like I would love to work with her again if I could. I don't think I need to teach her anything. I would just sit and toss her all day if I had to. But I also think that I think it'd be fun to get like a younger player that has a really high ceiling. Like a Jada Coleman to me is really exciting. I think she's going to be unreal. I think Chambly on Georgia is going to be unreal. I think there's just a lot but then at the same time, like, how would you not want somebody like Allo or Hemphill? I'm really not answering the question. I'm just reciting people's names of players that I would like to take. But I just think that like they're all so great in their own way, and that's what makes them good. You can't it's not right or fair to sit and compare Hemphill and Allo because what they each do, while they do hit home runs, like they have different things that they excel at, which is what makes them them. Like they're just very unique. Sometimes we group them in together too much, and it's not fair. Like all of them are different in their own way, and like what they do for their team is like if they don't do what they're doing right now for their team, their team's not going to be there. So I don't think I answered the question. I'm sorry, Perry, but I guess if I had the option to have anybody again, just because the kid has my heart, I would take Kaylee Tao in a heartbeat.
She had a big hit in that winner's bracket game against UCLA there that broke that game open. So good timing on that. We got news here. Oklahoma just tweeted 8:17 Central first pitch. So good news there. 8:17 Central first pitch. That's what they're going to. So that tells me they feel confident they can get these games in tonight. It'll be a late night, but nonetheless. Couple quick thoughts here because we're going to kind of do a few more minutes and then we'll kind of wrap it up and get everybody set for the matchups here tonight. But JMU now, as a head coach now to mid-major, you got to be smiling with the run to JMU because I'm sure you're going to be talking to your players about this JMU, that we can beat JMU moving forward. What's been your thoughts on the Dukes here in this incredible run they have had?
Well, I think number one, like I just, what Lauren and Jen, who were there, when Mickey Dean was there too, like what they've done to not miss a beat and then increase, they deserve a lot of credit. And I don't know if they've always been getting it. I think it's really easy for someone to be like, well, these players were so-and-so's and he got a new job. Like, no, like they're there. They're in the trenches every day doing their thing. And I just want to put that out there. Like, I think what those two have done is phenomenal. But I mean, you're just talking about a team that plays the game the right way. It sounds like such a simple thing to talk about. I bring this up because it's something that I personally value as a coach. My players probably hate hearing me say it by now because I'm constantly saying, like, just go play the game the right way. Because there's a lot of things that tie into that, right? It's like your heart, your hustle, your effort, it's like, okay, nobody wants to hear that. They all want to talk about hitting home runs and stuff, but you got to play the game the right way because the game will always pay you back. And I think when you listen to these kids' post-game interviews, like it melts your heart because they truly love each other and they are so appreciative and thankful of what they have and what they've done. And that's what every program should. We all strive to be there, but they're like the embodiment of it, And like when you say talk to my team about it, like that's stuff that I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about like they love each other. Their bench players look fired up in, the dugout shots. Their starting pitcher is willing to lay out and try to tag somebody out at home plate. Like, it's all that kind of stuff. They obviously have talent. They've been very talented. I think everybody gets irked about the whole Cinderella thing because in theory, like, yes, at the World Series, they're brand new, but their RPI and their regional performances have been there for like at least 5-6 years.
Oh yeah. They were in the Supers in 19, Supers in 16, a win away from the World Series.
And so that's like when they get mad, they're mad because they feel like no one, like they've been there. They just haven't gotten over the hump of getting to the World Series.
Right. And I think that the reason it's this big stunner, it's an undefeated team over a number one seed, which has only happened one other time when Louisiana Lafayette beat Florida in 2008. So, by the way, good news here. Victor's hitting me up. They are getting ready to open the gates. So that's a good sign over there at OKC there. And again, kind of trying to get on track to start here in about half hour. So let's kind of preview these two matchups here, since we're now pretty good here. And we'll kind of wrap it up with just previewing these two games. What's going to be the keys you're going to look for in this UCLA-Oklahoma game?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to wonder how Garcia is going to bounce back after getting hit pretty hard last night. Excuse me. I think that'll be interesting. I don't think she won't. I think she's good at what she does, so she should do it. But, at the end of, we all know that their number 2 didn't travel. So, it's on her, and I'm sure she wants the ball. Of course she does. Who doesn't want the ball?
She's done it before.
But I'm sure that's what a lot of people are wondering is what is it going to look like? I think anytime somebody plays Oklahoma, the question is, how do you keep them in the ballpark? Like I said, I think you have to understand you're going to give up 1, maybe 2, but how do you keep them? How do you get miss hits? It's not, our game, people worry too much about strikeouts. It's more of how do you get a lot of miss hits? How do you get people to pop the ball up? How do you jam somebody? All that. Having Velo and having Garcia's ability to throw, I think she can do it. But I just talked about, I think OU hits both sides of the plate well. So it's it's going to be interesting. And on the flip side, UCLA doesn't have a stingy offense by any means.
No, but they've been scuffling, which has kind of been surprising. They haven't been as explosive as maybe some people would have thought, considering the talent they have.
Yeah. I mean, but again, every game is a new start, in my opinion, at these World Series games. I think in postseason it is, but especially in the World Series, every single game is a new start. And look at, when Kate Gordon hit that home run for JMU, she was 0 for 14. That takes grit and confidence to be able to still go and take your hacks. And I say that because, if people are viewing UCLA, like you just said, they still have to be able to go and swing at good pitches. All you can really control is your approach. And if you're on time and you swing at a pitch, you can do damage too. It's pretty black and white. So they got to be able to do that still. And
let me ask you this though. They just got perfect game. Does that play any mentally with you as a hitter? Or do you block, or do you just block that off?
I'd be pissed off. I'm get me in the box. I need to go hit. But I don't. I think they are. I think that they probably have had enough big games, and they've got enough older players that have been through it, and a coaching staff that they're going to use. Again, you're going to use it. When I was at Penn State, we had this great sports performance coach, and he used to always say, failure is just information. It's what you choose. And so if I got no hit, I'm just taking that as information. I've probably gone through the at-bats with my players in the hotel, been hey, we're going to look, this pitch got you. You can handle this. You do it all the time. And I'm just going to love them up with confidence. That's what you got to do. They got to go out there and do the thing. They've proven they can do it. They're number 2, no hitter. It'll be okay. They're going to, so I think you're going to have 2 teams that are just going to come out and they're going to need to take their hacks, and whoever is going to be able to, do the little things when those matter is going to win that game. And that could be potentially having to get a bunt down. That could be situational hitting. That could be just making a clean defensive play on a routine ball. But at this point moving forward, teams that can't do that they're not going to win. This is not possible. The softball's too good.
Yeah, really good. And it's going to be special with these 2 programs. It's going to be weird because if UCLA loses, it'll be the first time that a Pac-12 team will not be represented in the semifinals of the Women's College World Series since 2016.
Yeah.
But if Oklahoma loses, it'll be the first time the Sooners don't make it to a semifinal, at least in Oklahoma City, since 2015. So
you gotta love that, right? You gotta love having those 2 things riding on the game.
It's a heavyweight title fight that we're getting probably a little earlier than we would have.
I know. That's what Twitterverse has been saying. A lot of people are upset that it's happening right now.
By the way, your good buddy Kristen Sandberg just tweeted. She's watching her Islanders. That's right. There's hockey playoffs. There you go.
Yeah.
I'm so confused with her because she's 1 minute tweeting about Georgia stuff, and then it's Islanders playoff hockey.
She's a big hockey person.
Oh my God. No, that is not a joke. She gets very intense about it. I've tried texting her during a hockey playoff game. I won't do that. That's not a mistake I'll do again.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Let's get into the second matchup. Hopefully, it'll be a late night. Oklahoma State, Florida State. What are you going to look forward there?
Oh man, I actually think those two are really evenly matched up. I think their pitching to me is very similar. You're talking about two pitchers that throw, a drop. Like in essence, they're going to get a lot of ground outs. So I think it's going to be, again, like I just think whichever team can make an adjustment the quickest in the box in that particular game is probably going to be who you see winning. I think if you're going 4, 5, 6 innings and people aren't making adjustments on these pitchers, that's like a nightmare to me as a coach. I don't want to get that deep in the game, and that's been happening. But I don't know. I think to me, like they're just very almost like mirror image of each other. I realize that Oklahoma State has a little bit higher power numbers, but I just think like their DNA as a whole, they really match up. So I think it'll be a good game. At least I hope it is. Like I'm trying to see one of these games where we have a lot of like people having to gun down runners and stuff like that. I want one of those games. I was all about the perfect game, but like I need some more excitement in my life now.
Well, you might get it, and especially historically, late night games for whatever reason turn into wild games. I'll never forget one year Auburn and UCLA played like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and it was a back and forth game. So you might get your wish. You might have to get some caffeine, but you'll get your wish if you stay up there. All right, Coach, this has been awesome. We've kept you on for an hour, so we appreciate that. I like that a lot of our audience appreciates that. We're hoping to see some softball here tonight, but loved your analysis. I knew you'd be great at it. That's why I wanted to make sure to get you in and not get you on at like at 3 a.m. if we had to. So,
I would.
Hey, like I said, we're rooting for you in Western Illinois, and like I said, appreciate you the intelligence that you have brought to our program. That is, you've raised the bar. So enjoy the rest of the World Series. I'm not going to ask you who to pick a winner because you hate those questions. I've learned that about you.
I just want whoever wins to be somebody that is showing kids across the country how to play the game.
Yeah.
Because this is the platform, and this is where little girls, like, this is what they learn from. So, like, we talk about their these players are role models, but like show kids that it's okay to still bunt. We don't have to not bunt. Like if you got to bunt, get a bunt down.
There's room for the game to do various things.
That's what I'm hoping for, is that the softball moving forward is like showing truly like what our game should be played like. So thank you for having me. So good to see you as always.
Same with you. We'll be in touch. Enjoy the rest of the World Series, and we'll talk soon.
See ya.
Yeah, but that's head coach Alisa Goler, ladies and gentlemen, joining us here on In the Circle Live, as we are hopeful to get some softball in here in about 30 minutes. In fact, let's bring in Vic here now. Let's bring back Vic. Hopefully you got the internet all figured out. Give us an update here, Oklahoma City. Good news here? Good news?
Does this look like good news to you, sir? Fans are entering the stadium as we speak. We're about exactly 30 minutes away from first pitch. Probably the most anticipated elimination game in this stadium in quite a long time. Oklahoma versus UCLA. According to Graham Hayes, this marks the first time since 2008 where 1 versus 2 will take place as an elimination game. So it's going to be a very fun atmosphere. Fans actually walking right near me right now, sir. I got a feeling that I think the rain may impact the ability of an all-time session record, which was set last night with the winners bracket games. But it's going to be a very sizable crowd tonight for UCLA, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State versus Florida State. Now, again, 8:17 first pitch, so don't be surprised if you see that buffer time between games get shrunk down to ensure both games get in on time.
They're going to have to, Vic. I mean, I don't expect this game to be a quick game. They're going to have to if they want to sneak these 2 games in.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you think the field conditions will be like? People are asking about that, about the field. What do you think it's looking like? Remember, this is all renovated stadiums here. So what do you think? Do you think the field's going to be an issue at all, or could be a factor?
The drainage system is pretty good. Expect a few balls to maybe skip by some outfielders early on because they're still testing the wet turf. So you play like maybe see a single. If you take a wrong angle, you may see it turn into a double or a triple. Expect a lot of small ball possibly, if that's the case. but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if we see high score again. Of course, Nicole Nate's going to be starting for OU, and then you got Rachel Garcia for UCLA. So, and then for Florida State, I mentioned Arnold got the start today, and Sandercock came in relief and picked up the win. I think Sandercock's going to start versus Oklahoma State. Everly will get the ball, but don't be surprised if she struggles early. They go to Kylie Maxwell because she pitched very well in relief to keep them in on a winners bracket game last night versus JMU. So I wouldn't be surprised if Coach Gajewski has that mindset where if Everly gets into any trouble early, he pulls her early, put in Maxwell, and then they regain the lead and re-enter Everly to close out the deal.
Obviously, with these late times, we don't know the next time we'll be on live. Victor's going to make that decision because, well, he's an hour ahead of me in Oklahoma City. So keep it on In the Circle Twitter the next time we'll be on live as we're figuring this out on the fly. So I want to ask you this real quick, and I know we got to get going.
Yeah.
You were there. Arizona, Florida State, tight game. Florida State pulls it out, but obviously the story afterwards, now the speculation begins. Mike Condrea, was that his last game? He obviously did not answer that question in the press conference. Says he's going to take time and, he's going to make that call, but it's about his players and things like that. What was the mood like in the press box there as that game ended, and what's the word over there? What are people talking there?
Well, the Arizona press conference was a delayed start for one of my sources telling me, mainly with Coach Condrea talking with his team and his assistants, Caitlin Lowe and Tara Moat, who are very close to Coach Condrea, obviously. The way what we saw with the production by ESPN, which is grade A as always, him taking down the lineup card, getting that game ball, it makes you believe that it's going to be his last game. And I think, and I talked to Justin McLeod off air about this, Condrea didn't want to make the announcement today if it was going to be his last game to take away from what's going to be happening tonight. Because Mike Condrea understands he is not bigger than the game. So I would expect maybe within the next week or so to make an announcement. I don't think it's going to be anything formal because that's not the kind of guy Mike Condrea is. Just something, if that's a statement saying, hey, Mike Condrea has announced his retirement, and there'll be a national search.
So you believe this is his last game?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll hope to have Justin on if we don't go on later tonight, which who knows? If not tomorrow, whenever.
It's likely going to be at some point tomorrow. It ain't going to. Let me put it this way: we're not going to be going on the air anytime after 1 o'clock Central, because I have a feeling we may be at the ballpark for a while with these two games.
That's correct. So that's why we're on right now.
I mean that's why you need to follow us on Twitter. I made you a brief recap on our Twitter page a little afterwards, but it's not going to be the extensive live in the circle after dark that we've been doing the last 2+ nights in our modified version of weather delay edition of In the Circle Live from Oklahoma City.
We've done it all on this show, haven't we? Of course, a rain delay.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, goodness.
It wouldn't be a Women's College World Series without one.
It's crazy. It's crazy. What else as we're now minutes away from the resumption here? Obviously, the Arizona story will play itself out. But what are you looking forward to in this Oklahoma UCLA game? This is a heavyweight. This is a game that has been hyped. A few minutes. I think this is, as I mentioned earlier here. I don't know if you heard me with Coach Goler.
Yes.
If UCLA loses, this will be the first time that a Pac-12 team will not be in a semifinal in the Women's College World Series since 2016. But if Oklahoma loses, it'll be the first time the Sooners have not been to a semifinal since 2015. A lot at stake here for two legacy programs with a lot of legacy players here.
It's going to come down to which team can strike first. And we saw in this World Series, and I keep mentioning this, teams that score first are now 6-1, the one being Arizona today versus Florida State. If you're Oklahoma, if you're UCLA, you want to put pressure on Nicole May because she's had a lot longer time than anticipated to think about this. If you're Oklahoma, you want to jump on Garcia early and see if they're still impacted by that perfect game throw by Montana Faust last night. Whichever you mentioned, it's going to be a heavyweight fight, so it's going to be blow after blow after blow. Whichever team can counterpunch best, I feel is going to have the best chance to win and advance to semifinal Sunday to take on Odyssey Alexander and company.
I cannot wait. I don't think anybody could. It's going to be a fascinating game, a legacy game. Somebody's career is it going to be Rachel Garcia's last game, or is it going to be the last game of this dynamic Oklahoma offense? It's so many great questions here. We're going to monitor this game. We're going to be covering it from all different angles. We're going to check out In the Circle. Let's be on Twitter all night, up in the midnight. We'll have the post-game press conferences on our YouTube page, which has exploded. Victor will keep you updated of any extra content, special live content that we'll provide after the game. But, Vic, I'm going to let you go here. It's thankfully softball coming here soon, everybody.
Yes.
So for Victor Anderson in Oklahoma City, for Alisa Goler joining us, Western Illinois head coach, 3-time All-American at Georgia joining us, we thank you for joining us for this unique edition of In the Circle Live from Oklahoma City, literally here at the Women's College World Series, in between sessions as we get you set for late night. Is it after dark session now? I don't know.
Not yet. It's still light here, so it's not yet after dark, sir.
All right.
Maybe where you are, but not here.
Yeah, it's definitely over here. I can tell you that. So until at some point, enjoy the softball. We'll talk to you at some point on Sunday. Until then, this has been In the Circle live from Oklahoma City.
Good night, Canada.